Bead Company, and today I am going to be showing you a very simple way to play with buttons doing this Criss Cross Button bracelet. These buttons are new buttons that we just got in and picked up on our trip to the Czech Republic. These are a table cup version almost of the cup button, and it's always fun, so much fun, to go and kind of see what you can get and dig and find different things. Ever since I was little, I've had this obsession with buttons and going through my grandma's sewing bin, gathering buttons and making simple button jewelry like this. I think she probably taught me how to make these bracelets when I was about 6 or 7 years old, and I used to make tons of them even with just sewing string. Now I make them a little bit more sophisticated, and I'm going to be using the knotted cord. Anna recently made a bracelet very similar that is the same method, very easy method, kind of crossing the threads over, doing that crisscross method with these new cup buttons as well, and I said I have to do it. I have to get one on. Hers was done with silk cording, a size 10 silk. So you can use size 10 silk. I'm using the 0.8 millimeter knotted cord, which is a Chinese knotting cord. And you'll want to have that as well as your buttons handy, but also there's a couple other materials that you may want to have handy. Below the video, there is a date that says when the video was published. In that information, if you do the little down arrow, I'll put a link to the different products that you can purchase from us online. So again, you can use a bunch of different kinds of materials to string. It's going to depend on the hole size of your buttons. 0.8 millimeter or size 10 silk cording is recommended. Usually the hole size is going to be about a 1 millimeter or a 1.4 millimeter in a button. You'll have trouble getting some cording through it. So that's why kind of the knotted and the silk cording is great to work with that. You're going to need double your wrist plus about 10 to 12 inches of the cording per bracelet. That being said, the bigger buttons, you're actually going to use less cording because you're going to have less knots. Smaller buttons, you're going to have more cording. You may also, in addition to your buttons and your cording, want to have some smaller beads here to use for the end clasp. I'm just using 8 OC beads, which again will fit on both of those materials. Also, you definitely want to have handy some super glue or super glue. We're going to use that at the very start to make needles out of our knotted cord to make it easier to go through the holes of the button without making them totally blunt. You also want to have some scissors handy. These are the slip and snip scissors that I use and travel a lot with, that I like to have handy. You can also have a ruler handy. I eyeball everything, which probably isn't the best, but I like to eyeball things as I work with them and get that cording measurement for myself. So other than those couple items, your cord, your glue, your scissors, and a couple beads, you can pick out and have fun kind of going through your button collection or ordering buttons to make this fun crisscross button bracelet. So the first thing officially to do is actually pick out which buttons you want to use. Again, this can be done with any buttons. I'm just having the fun of using the new buttons that we got here at the store, these cut, chiseled cup buttons. So again, you're using your knotted cord, and you're going to, after picking out your buttons, grab your scissors and get ready to cut the knotting cord. The knotting cord is going to get doubled over in order to make the bracelet, so you want to make sure that you're cutting enough to do so. Also, the knots between, which will hold the beads in place and hold them straight up, are going to take some room as well. So if I have an 8-inch wrist, for example, I need 16 inches plus an extra 10 inches. So you're doubling the number and adding 10. This should be more than enough to do your loop and your actual knots between the buttons, but that's going to get you enough. So because I want mine to be 7 inches, I'm going to do 14 inches plus 10. So again, 24 inches. So you're just going to go ahead with your knotted, get that 24 inches out, and give it a snip. Once you have the knotted cord cut, it will eventually kind of start to fray. Because I'm going to be going into the holes a lot of the buttons, I don't want to struggle every time I'm going through a hole. This is why I actually chose the knotting cord, or you can use silk cording rather than doing a cotton cording. So, taking your super glue, you're going to go over the ends here of your cording about a 1/2 inch. That gives you extra space that it can, that you can cut pieces off if you need to. If you get a little extra of the glue on, you can just kind of press it off onto the glue container or onto a bag that the buttons came out of. Close up your glue and let these dry for a couple seconds. Once these are dry, then you're going to figure out, once you have your beads, what order you want your beads to be in. Because a lot of people want to put more beads onto their project than they actually need, you want to keep your favorite button and maybe use that to make it the statement clasp button. So because this green button is really bright, that's what I'm going to use to do my clasp. So after a couple seconds, a couple more minutes of this drying, we'll go in and get ready to start the bracelet by adding our button clasp at the start. So the ends are glued and they are stiff now. So you can see it's really flexible above them. And then it almost makes like a needle. And if you're wondering, yes, I did test and super glue my fingers together. That's kind of the joy of using super glue. So I decided that the green one is going to be my statement button, meaning my clasp. I'm going to put this button on so that the bowl shape of the button is facing down and my thread ends are coming out to the back. I'm going to let that push down against the actual clasp here, grabbing and making sure that my thread ends are equal at each end. I'm going to do an overhand knot to hold that button in place. If you sew a lot, you should have no problem kind of getting that close. You can see I push down with my fingers as I get that knot closer to the button. And it doesn't need to be super tight anyway, so you don't need to worry about it being super tight. After this section, we're going to go into using our beads. So you want to think of your beads as you're doing the buttons as a figure 8. The cording is going to come through the button, through here, out opposite ways, and through out the back. So I have my button on, or I have my thread on here, and I'm going to be putting on that first button. The button's going to go in through the bottom. This one's going to come to the top through that second hole. So we're going in one hole and out the other with different threads. What this is going to do is they're going to kind of cross in the middle there, and you can see they'll sit kind of side to side. So again, one of the pieces of the cording went in from the top and one went in from the bottom. Pushing this button then up towards the knot, I'm going to grab both pieces of cording after I have that, so you can see it kind of happening in place, and I'm going to do an overhand knot. Again, making sure those thread ends are still equal. And I'm not going to do it super tight against the button because I want it to be able to move. I want just a little bit of play. Once you have your first button in, it's really repetitive. I'm grabbing my next button here. I'll do one of these little flower ones. Again, down one side and up the other. That button's going to turn. I'm going to flip it. And that button then is going to slide right up to the one before it. From here, again, grab both pieces and do a little knot. There you go. So I've got 2 on, and I'm going to continue adding all of the other buttons, and I'm just playing with the color. I picked out buttons that I really like, and I'm probably going to only use about 8 buttons, even though I have more than that sitting here as you create, depending on what button style you use. If you're using these fun table cut cup buttons, or if you're using other buttons as well, you can kind of play around with those, seeing exactly how many you need. Again, your favorite ones don't keep to the end because you probably are not going to be adding as many as you think you will. So I'm going to continue adding on the buttons, again going through. I'll show you one more here. I'll pick up one of these bright orange guys. I'm going down the first hole, and then I'm coming up through the second hole, making sure the button is sitting correctly then, right along the other one, because I want them all sitting kind of facing up. And then I'm going to go in with both threads here and do that overhand knot nice and tight. As you're doing it too, you can see it has a little give. You may want to pull it a little bit so that way that give is not exaggerated. So go ahead and continue on adding on your buttons. So I have all my buttons on here, and I ended up, like I said, with 8 buttons plus the clasp button. So 9 altogether for my size wrist here. And I'm going to show you that it fits almost exactly. Again, it will have a tiny bit of stretch to it because the material naturally has a bit of stretch. So the beads are almost identical, or almost touching. What we're going to do now, super simple. So I'm going to leave enough space after my last knot for my starter button to fit inside. Taking the overhand knot method again, I'm going to do that double knot. And before pulling it tight, I want to make sure that button can go in. You can even usually just kind of eyeball it to make sure that the button is going to fit in that little loop there. I don't want it to be too big or too small, obviously, because then you won't get it on. And then before you really pull it really tight, just do a check on your wrist and to make sure that that button is going to go through the loop that you created. From here now, it's time just to kind of decorate the ends. So you take your 8 OC beads, and I just picked 2 out for each end. You might have to trim your end down a little bit. Of course, these want to give me a struggle. And you'll spin those onto the ends of the cord here. So I'm going to do a little break here, get these buggers on by trimming down the cord, and I'll show you how we knot it off. So after trimming down the end, and again, that's why I leave the extra space here, that end gets a little blunt as you're working with it. Those beads will, 8 OC beads will fit nicely over this 0.8 millimeter cording. I have 2 on each side. You can do 1. You don't even have to do any. That's kind of up to you. I like the look of it once it has the seed beads on. And I picked a metallic since I have a lot of those metallic coatings. And you're going to just do an overhand knot with each cording. You can do them, I like to do them just the tiniest bit of different lengths. That way, when it hangs and you put them on, it gives it a nice look. This cording stays together really, really well. If you want to, you can go ahead and do a little bit of glue at the end. That's up to you. I'm just going to trim down my ends here. And you can see I leave just a tiny little bit of a tail. Again, that's just for the look of it. And then your bracelet is completed. So your crisscross button bracelet is finished, and you can have fun wearing the bracelet. It's a fun thing that if you have some vintage buttons at home, that you can actually go in and create the design, making the different buttons. I've made tons of button jewelry even as a small child. 7, 8, 9, used to go through my grandmother's button box and make tons and tons of these. So once we saw the buttons, Anna was inspired to make a button bracelet, kind of solid, and decided I need to do this crisscross button bracelet as well. So I'm happy and excited to actually wear my crisscross button bracelet today with my outfit and to have made something fun with all of these new buttons. Again, go through your button collection, look, have fun, add together. It's a nice quick also gift for somebody, and you can use some sentimental pieces as well. I used to go through also thrift stores when I was in high school, looking at all the clothing just so I could cut off the buttons. So it really is kind of a button love and a button passion of mine. Again, if you need any of the materials, you can go back to the beginning of the video where we listed off the different materials that you'll be using, as well as during the beginning that kind of date stamp that says when the video was produced. Below that is that show more button or the down arrow, which will give you links to all the different products as well. As always, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel to get regular ideas and updates, different tutorials showing how to use different products. and as well as regular information from us, the Potomac Bead Company. You can also stay connected with me online at PotomacBeads.com. Stay connected with us on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest. Also join our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. There you often get the first sneak peek. We ask your opinions, your advice for different things to get in the business. Also, it's a great place and a wonderful place to get inspiration from other designers and bead makers, and just a really great group of people that love to make jewelry. As always, thank you so much for watching, and have fun making the Criss Cross Button bracelet.